Today we're talking about the top-tier thinking in Marxist political economy, financial liberalization. A lot of people say financial liberalization will bring economic takeoff, but from the perspective of Marxist political economy, this is actually loosening constraints for capital while digging a pit for ordinary people. So why did financial liberalization even happen? It all started with the stagflation crisis. Back then, the real economy crashed, the national treasury was empty, the government's finances were barely holding on, and social unrest was just around the corner. That's when the financial sector, which used to be strictly regulated, became the lifeboat. The government decided to break those regulatory shackles, letting finance break free from the constraints of the real economy. And that's how financial liberalization made its debut. As soon as the controls were lifted, overseas hot money flooded in. This cash wildly drove up house prices and stock prices. The whole market went crazy. Everyone thought the economy was about to boom, and they rushed to buy assets like crazy. But once the assets were pumped up to the top, these hot money cashed out and ran off. As soon as the capital pulled out, house prices and stock prices crashed instantly. The whole market fell into chaos, and everyone was left stunned. At this point, ordinary people are stuck with lifelong debt they can never pay off, and their assets are worthless. While the rich, they use a tiny bit of money to bottom fish all these crashed assets at rock-bottom prices, making a huge fortune. See? This isn't some economic problem at all. It's a problem of benefit distribution. Who calls the shots, who takes the big profits, and who takes the blame. So before financial liberalization, what was our financial system like? Back then, there were strict regulations. Separate operation, banks couldn't do speculation, and there was interest rate control, capping the interest rate. Back then, banks just did their job, lending to the real economy, and savers' money was safe. But when stagflation hit, the government ran out of money, the treasury was empty. Officials sat down to discuss, saying, what if we loosen all these financial regulations? That could save our finances. The first step was lifting interest rate control, removing that cap on interest rates. Banks could finally set their own interest rates, they were over the moon. Then the second step, lifting the separate operation restriction. That no speculation sign was smashed right away. Banks could finally do speculative investments, they didn't have to just do deposits and loans anymore. The third step was opening the capital account. We opened the capital gate at the border. From then on, international capital could flow in and out of our market freely, no more controls. And this just so happened to line up with the dollar easing cycle. The Fed printed a ton of money, the dollar became cheap and abundant, all this money flowed out, looking for opportunities in other countries. These international capitalists first borrowed a bunch of cheap dollars, then exchanged them for the local currency. The exchange rate was still stable back then, and they took this money, ready to buy local assets. The earliest example is the Latin American debt crisis. Those Latin American countries borrowed a ton of foreign debt. On the surface, the economy was booming, everyone was celebrating growth, but no one saw that the debt behind it had already piled up into a mountain. But the good times didn't last long. The Fed started raising interest rates, the dollar tightened, and the dollar became expensive all of a sudden. These international capitalists saw this, thought, oh, we need to run fast. And that's how the Asian financial crisis happened. Thailand's exchange rate crashed directly. Hot money fled like crazy. The whole market fell into total chaos. Decades of development progress in Thailand was looted overnight. Later, they came up with an even crueler trick: asset securitization. Banks took ordinary people's home loans, packed them up, cut them into tiny pieces, packaged them into fancy-looking financial products, and sold them to investors to make more money. Banks even lent money to poor people who had no ability to repay at all. They thought, house prices will keep rising forever. What's there to worry about? And what happened? House prices stopped rising, the poor couldn't repay their loans, their houses were taken back by the banks, house prices crashed directly, and the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis broke out just like that. After the crisis, ordinary people lost their jobs, got stuck with lifelong debt, all their assets devalued. Their lives were miserable, they couldn't see any hope. But the rich? They took advantage of the crash, used very little money to buy up all those devalued assets, and when the market recovered, they made a killing again. That's when people finally realized. We always thought this was an economic problem, normal market fluctuations, but it's not at all. It's benefit distribution. The people who make the money are always the same group, And the ones who take the blame are always us ordinary people. That's what Marxist political economy tells us. The essence of capital is to pursue freedom, because only when it's free can it harvest the whole world more conveniently. That's just its nature. This is the dollar harvest cycle, what we call wool shearing. When the dollar eases, money flows in to pump up assets. When the dollar tightens, the money runs off, leaving a crashed market. Round after round, it never changes. And those complex financial derivatives that look so professional, those complicated models, they look so advanced, but actually they just spread the risk to the whole financial system, making no one know where the risk is, just to make their harvest easier. In the end, I want to say, the more free money is, the less free people are, the more indulgent finance is, the more passive ordinary people are. This is the truth of financial liberalization. Did you get it?